The deal, guys? Marcus here. So today I got my homegirl Rebecca, aka at Vegan Bodega Cat. She has a super dope YouTube channel. She's on Instagram as well. And today our conversation is, of course, going to talk about food, but we're going to dive into a few other things too. But our whole conversation is going to be around creating your own standards and not following the status quo. Okay, so here's the big problem. You want to live plant-based and excel at your health and performance. You're looking for real ways to change your life and the world by reducing your footprint. How do we continue to perform in every facet of our lives and do it without eating meat and following the format that's been force-fed to us our entire lives? And do it on your own terms through a plant-based diet? That's the real question, and I'll give you those answers and more. I'm Marcus Watts, and welcome to the Vegan Transition. Record like a little bit of the backstory. I kind of like to just get, us chatting and stuff like that before the official episode starts. Because I feel like when you come into an episode, it's just like, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just like straight up like, all right, let's dig into this, and so it makes it a little more cordial. So thanks for coming on though. I'm really excited to get to chat with you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad that we met in Lancaster.
Yeah. Yo, wasn't that Veg Fest in Lancaster? Didn't it? It kind of blew me away. You've been to a lot more than me, but I thought it was like organized really well. I was super surprised for such a small town that it was the way that it was.
Honestly, I was surprised that they had that many options in Lancaster. I don't know. I didn't imagine it, but it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. And then it was cool because, when I saw, obviously at that point, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know who you were, unfortunately. I mean, what's wrong with me? But obviously I knew who Berto was. And then when I saw you, I started looking you up like while I was there, and I was like, oh man, she has a really cool platform going on. And then now I'm like a nerdy YouTube follower. I'm like subscribed. I'm looking at all the
Thank you.
I actually study your videos because they help me for what I'm about to do with my YouTube. So thank you for being a pioneer for me.
Thank you. It's a big learning curve, and I have a long way to go, especially with like equipment and stuff, but I'm having fun with it. And since I've been consistent since January, people are surprised. I've seen quite a bit of growth since January, so I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. And I think that something that you just said goes right into the topic that we're talking about today. And that's how you're like, I just started in January. There's a lot of room for growth, but I like what I'm doing and I like sharing it. You know what I mean? And so many times, like I was just speaking with somebody and I know I've been guilty of this, and it's like, it's not good enough. I don't have the right mind. You know what I mean? You're like just fucking diving in there.
No, I have actually so I get a lot of messages from people, and this is not really on the topic that we're talking about today, but I get a lot of messages from people asking me how to start a platform, or specifically how to start a YouTube channel. And honestly, it sounds stupid, but my one advice is just to start. Like, don't wait till you get better equipment. Don't wait until you feel prepared. Don't wait until you've studied editing, because no matter how much preparation you do, your first few videos are probably going to suck. Yeah. And but you have to go through that learning curve to get better. And the sooner you start the learning curve, the sooner you end up where you want to be. So putting off the learning curve only just puts off your success or your growth. So you have to just start, even if it's starting recording on your phone, because nowadays there are YouTube channels that are very successful using an iPhone camera.
Yeah. It's funny.
You don't need it.
Casey Neistat, you know what I'm saying, talks about that. If you guys don't know who Casey Neistat is, go check him out. He's like one of the biggest YouTubers. I don't want to say in the world, but he's definitely one of the biggest YouTubers. And, he ended up doing videos and stuff for Nike and stuff. And he talks about just using whatever equipment you have. He's like, if you have your phone, use your phone. He's like, if you have your, Canon, 60D, use that. He's like, if you have, a little flip cam, he's like, use that. So I think that's a really good point. So, if you guys haven't already, go check out her YouTube channel, Vegan Bodega Cat. But so listen, Becca, today we're going to talk about creating your own standards, and you have a really cool story. And more than anything, I think that you have a really cool perspective. I love the stance that you take. I love the things that you address that are veganism and far outside of it. So I'm really excited to share some of that with people. So, but please first just tell us a little bit, about yourself, how you came into veganism, a little bit about your background, before you started to create your platform, and just share your life, because that's really what you're doing. Um, can you just share a little bit about that? Tell people a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My story of how I came to veganism isn't really interesting. I love working out. I've always been active in one way or another, but maybe like 5 or 7, I think 7 years ago, I started working out pretty consistently and then weightlifting. And I just over time realized that I recovered better when I didn't eat meat. I still was super addicted to dairy, even though I was lactose intolerant, but I just didn't care because it tasted good. I would just deal with the consequences. Um, and then I watched a video a few months after I gave up meat called Dairy is Scary. And I like saw the business practices behind everything, and I couldn't in good conscience continue to pay for it. So
Mm.
that's when I went fully vegan. And at that point, I didn't know anyone who was vegan. I didn't even understand the concept behind veganism. I was just like, oh, I don't want to pay for that. And so I just stopped. Um, and then around 6 months after that, my dad is a hunter. So he went hunting and brought home a deer, and he made us all deer for dinner. And he was like playing the whole guilt trip thing, like, I made this for you. I hunted this for you. You're not going to eat it. And so at that point, my stance on veganism wasn't really an ethical thing. So I just like caved, and I ate some, and I had a stomach ache for like a day and a half. My stomach was just like, I'm not used to this anymore. Please don't do this again. And that was the last time I ate anything that wasn't vegan, at least on purpose, because everyone makes mistakes. So that's my veganism story. Not too interesting. That was around 4 years ago. My life story. Ugh. So I grew up in an Arab household. We were not as traditional as some others can be, which thank God, because I love my family and I love my culture, but it's really a culture based upon shame. And it's a very controlling culture, especially for women. But I'll get to that in a second. So I grew up in an Arab household. I also grew up homeschooled because my sister has special needs. And after the first few years of my sister's life, my mom kind of felt guilty for not paying enough attention to me and my younger brother. So she took us out of school just to kind of get to know us better. She thought she was going to do it for a year. We ended up doing it until high school, where I went back into school, and I had some trouble because I was not, I feel like I'm going to brag, but I was too advanced for my high school grade.
No, you're not bragging.
So
No,
I went,
like you're smart. Like fuck out of here. Like you know what I mean. Like listen, I wasn't one of those kids. I mean, I wasn't like I was just a normal kid. So like kids like you, I thought it was really cool. Like I could play basketball, and I was smart. I got good grades, but you guys were like in like another wing of the school. I was like, what's going on over there? So no, I feel you. Even being homeschooled and being ahead of the schedule, that's really cool. I mean, it kind of makes sense because having conversations with you, even in very like I'm a very good judge of people, even in very short having conversations with you, I thought that there was something up with you. You know what I mean? And then when I saw your content and the way that you speak and the way that you know what I mean, just you have a very defined personality. I was like, man, she's just very, intelligent, maybe not book smart, I thought, but just like emotionally and like socially intelligent.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so long story short, I ended up graduating high school super early, like 15. And at 16, I went to college. And I was always known as the smart kid. And so I identified very strongly with being the smart kid. And even though I had a very creative streak in me, ingrained in me was the idea that if I didn't use my brains for something difficult, then I would be wasting it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be a lawyer, because if I decided to go the artistic route, then all the work my parents had poured into me would have gone to waste, and all my brains would have gone to waste. Oh God,
Mm.
my life story is too long.
No, no. I think that
I'm trying to
I think you
condense
come to
it.
a really cool point though. Like it's a very interesting like vantage point to
Um,
have on like feeling like you have to do something because if not, everyone else is going to be so let down.
yeah, no, I definitely felt that way. I got a lot of positive attention for being smart when I was younger too. So it definitely became like, if I'm not the smart kid, then who am I, sort of
Mm.
thing. So I ended up going to college at 16. I triple majored politics, philosophy,
Hold
and
on. Whoa, whoa,
economics.
whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down, slow down. You went to college at 16?
Yeah.
All right, so this is like beyond like taking honors English or something here. That's amazing. That's a lot to take on, I'm sure. But
yeah, it was crazy. I went to college at 16. I triple majored politics, philosophy, and economics, and I was on the dean's list every year. I got straight A's. But after 2 years of doing that, getting straight A's, trying to have a little bit of a social life, and working as a hostess, so I would get off my shift at like 2 a.m. I burnt out. I reached a level in my life where I could give zero shits. And that was just so not like me. I was the kind of person who would micromanage my entire life. So I burnt out and I left college in the middle of the semester, which like my friends were just completely flabbergasted. And I went to California. I moved to California to like find myself. And
how old were you at this time, Rebecca?
I was 19 or yeah, I think I was 19. It was in the middle of my third year of college. So I left, went to California to find myself, and I had like a huge existential crisis because I was no longer the smart kid. I could no longer be of service to my peers. I used to tutor people 5-6 years older than me. And I was no longer in a situation where I could, how do I put this? Be of use to people with like my brain. Like I could no longer like help people with school or just impress people with how young I was in college because it was just such a big part of my identity. And so I had an identity crisis. I came back, I graduated college with a psychology degree. And then it was around this point or a little bit after that I was like, you know what? In so many parts of my life already, I've like defied the cultural norms. I just want to be happy. And that it's cheesy, but I just kind of wanted to be happy. I was tired of pushing myself to achieve all these things that I thought I had to. And so I started being a little bit more creative. I did a little bit on a YouTube channel back then. I think it was only just 2 videos. And I really enjoyed it. But I still had this idea that I could never support myself in this way. So I didn't really look into it too much until I started following some people on Instagram. Now, it was at this point I had gone vegan and I was lonely because I didn't know anyone around me that was vegan. So I just looked up the hashtag NYC. Sorry. I looked up the hashtag NYC vegan and I just followed a bunch of random people. And the funny thing is, one of those people I followed, I'm now in a relationship with, and the rest are all my friends. But at that point, I just followed a whole bunch of big accounts that hashtagged NYC vegan. And I saw that, like these people are making a living doing this. And I can do the same. And that's when I started my platform. And I think that's a pretty good condensed version of everything.
Yeah, man. You have a very interesting story. I mean, of course, see, I knew something was up with you. Okay, so you start on this journey now. So now it's like a mix of like, okay, like, I'm definitely down with the plant-based stuff. You've at a very young age gone through some serious like life experiences that most people are not getting into till like, I guess like the stuff that you were dealing with. I mean, you're in college, 2-3 years early, than most people. So you're dealing with a lot of these things. I think that you encountered a lot of things that people don't really deal with till like their like late 20s and even 30s, to be honest.
I had my first existential crisis a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, now it's okay. So now you're back in the city. You've done your college thing, right? You already know that, this way that you had kind of gone about identifying yourself wasn't your thing anymore. And you've come into this vegan lifestyle. And you kind of start playing around with the YouTube. So what happened next? Yeah, this is so interesting. I can only imagine like what comes next.
So I started really with just Instagram. I wanted to document my vegan journey, and again, like, I guess we'll tie it back to my culture. Growing up in a culture that is very I want to say suffocating. When you're in it, you don't realize how suffocating it is. But then when you're out of it, you look at it. And I remember a specific time when I realized how ridiculous some arbitrary rules are. My mom is a very hospitable person. So every Thanksgiving and Christmas, she would throw a party for everybody that didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And because of this, we'd have like up to 70 people over our house. Like it was crammed for these holidays. And we had this family friend and their family that would come. And one of the girls was around my age. And I remember because there were so many people crowded into our house, it was just very hot inside, even though it was Christmas, so it was cold outside. And this girl wouldn't take her jacket off. And you could tell that she was like sweating. It was like very uncomfortable for her. And she was wearing this winter jacket indoors. And I kind of looked at her and it took me a second to piece what was going on. Her dad didn't approve of her dress that she had chosen to wear to our house. And because of that, she wore her jacket on the entire time she was at our house. And she was very visibly uncomfortable at how hot she was. And it was a small thing, but I realized, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Her dress was perfectly appropriate. Like, literally nothing was showing. Maybe he didn't like that it wasn't long enough, or her shoulder was showing, or whatever. And because of that, she just was trained to be like, all right, the patriarch doesn't like my dress. I'm just going to be uncomfortable this entire get together.
Gotcha.
And that was just a normal thought for her. And in our culture, that is a normal thought to have. But partially because my family is a little more like liberal in terms of like the Arab lifestyle. And partially because I grew up in the United States, I guess, I was just kind of like, I just saw it and I was like, this seems super oppressive and sucky. And it was just that thought that showed me how ridiculously arbitrary that some of the rules we follow are. And now back to my platform, I love showing people that you don't have to stick to what you were taught. And I don't want to, I'm not in like wait, how do I put this?
No, you're good. You're good. I love it. It's just such a great perspective, that you give. I think a lot of people can identify with this in their own way.
Yeah.
They may not, you come from a different culture and things like that, but I think that everybody can identify with it. I know that I have my own experiences. I'm like, yes, like I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I don't want to just be like, oh my God, like fuck the culture, like, I'm not like that. I just feel like at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own life and your own happiness.
Yes.
And if you stick to a certain society's rules and they make you incredibly unhappy your own life, that's only your fault. And I know, even after saying that culture is very sticky. It's very hard to get rid of, especially if everybody you love and everybody you grew up with are still in it and pressuring you to be in it. And when you're in it, it's like impossible to see a way out, or it feels impossible to change your mindset. But if sticking with certain cultural and societal like patterns makes you miserable, or even just keeps you from being who you want to be, then you could just not. And it's so simple, but you could just not. If
it really is. Can I give an example? Can I give an example?
Sure.
No.
Yeah.
So, when I first started with living the plant-based lifestyle, I would share things like every now and then on Facebook, yeah. Right? And I wasn't like super big with like, talking about just living plant-based, just because, especially in 2014, 2015, people were like, literally, they just thought you would die. And like, it's funny, like the swing that's happened, because now it's like most of the women's national soccer team are plant-based.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now it's completely against everything that they said, would happen to you. And so I remember posting something on Facebook and I was like, look, I'm having this meal. It's no meat. It's no eggs. It's no dairy. And there's over like 70 grams of protein in this meal. And there were so many people that just like
jumped, and I wasn't saying like, don't eat meat. Meat is bad for you. If you're eating meat, you're an
Yeah.
asshole and you're gonna die. I just was saying this is what I'm eating, and this is pretty cool. And when I tell you the amount of like fitness, because I'm in the fitness industry, I owned a gym at the time. Um, People were just like saying how I was gonna pretty much die, and it's not digestible protein, and they were just throwing all this, like they weren't just saying like like engaging in conversation. They were like slandering. They were just like it was a full on attack. And
People are very stuck to their thought patterns.
yes,
And they don't know why. That's the funny part. It's all about asking why. Like,
well, I have a theory as to why. I actually do have a theory. So I'll finish this last part. So then I saw all the conversation, Rebecca, and I had a choice. I had a choice to engage and kind of throw fuel on the fire and tell people how wrong they were. And this was going to take like positive energy from my life. You know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
Or I could just not. And I
Yeah,
literally chose
not.
People. Listen, people say stuff to me, and I literally just say like, I just chunk up the deuce and I say, hey, listen, thank you so much for your opinion. Have a good day. You know what I'm saying? That's it. And I just keep it moving. And I'll let you take it after this. The reason I think, Rebecca, that people will attack, and this is plant-based and other things, right? It doesn't matter. The reason that people will attack what you're doing, if you're not harming anyone, you know what I'm saying? If what you're doing is not, detrimental to the, environment or harm, it's because you're putting them and their philosophies in the crosshairs. Because me saying that I'm having this meal with 70 grams of protein, plant-based, at 240 pounds, big black guy that can jump and put my arm in the rim and power clean 310 pounds, what do you think a fitness coach is going to tell their clients? You know what I'm saying? I'm directly going against how their lifestyle and their way of life is. And that's when people get upset because they're afraid that this could roll into what they're doing. So they got to tear your shit down. You know what I mean? And no matter what it is, if it's vegan, if it's, your religion, whatever, because they have to prove that what they're doing is right.
Yeah. Yeah, because then they're having the mental conflict, and that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, nobody wants to have to deal with their own shit, right?
Yep. Yeah, so
interesting.
I guess my it all boils down to you don't have to do anything. Like, you could or you could not. Now, that doesn't mean that like life is void of consequences. Like, whatever you choose, you can't choose it and avoid the consequences, but you do have that choice. And it's such a simple concept, but it's very, very hard. And
what was one of the hardest? What was a time where you wanted to put this into play? You were like, okay, look, I want to approach it like this, but to be honest, man, like you were kind of dealing with the conflict of how to actually do it. Was there like a tough moment where you kind of had to like come to grips with it and you weren't really sure, how to just stick to your guns or just even, like practice what you preach? Because I know that I've had times where it's like people just coming at you so hard and it's like, I don't know, man, just sometimes you can get so much shade thrown at you. You can feel like it's just like a blanket that's covering you. And I feel like it's your choice. You know what I mean? Like we're saying to just, pull it off and just keep it going or let it weigh you down. But I know I've had some moments of like insecurity and just kind of felt like I was running into that wall. Like, what was that for you?
Yeah. Okay. So 4 months ago, I got my own appointment. 4 months ago, I got my own apartment with my boyfriend. And that is like a huge no-no in our culture. Like in our culture, if you're seen like chatting with a guy outside, just like hi, how are you doing? All of a sudden in like 20 minutes, the whole village will know. And by the time you get home, your dad will be like, why were you talking to that boy? Right. So, and it's like people are scared to do things, because of the shame. So I was at the point where I'm 25 now. I don't know why I keep on thinking I'm 26. I'm 25 now. And I was living with my parents, which like in New York City, no shame, like things are expensive. But it was kind of stifling my ability to create because You know, when you live with a whole bunch of people, there's always someone in the kitchen. There's always somebody making noise. It's hard to film, you know? And I wanted to live a little bit closer to the city because of what I do. And the logical next step for me would be to get my own place. This way I have the freedom to film whenever I want. I have the convenience of being right next to everywhere that I'm like filming. And Roberto wanted to move in together, my boyfriend. And we were like, yeah, okay, let's do it. We could afford to do it. We're making enough money to split a tiny little studio. It's the logical next step. But the societal like shame of, it's not even me. I'm at the point where everybody in my extended family thinks I'm a terrible person. It's cool. I just felt bad for my immediate family because I didn't want people to be shaming them because of what I do. And that's where they really get you, because even if you don't give a shit about yourself, you're just like, oh, you know, I don't care anymore. You feel bad for your parents because they have to deal with the backlash. It's not just you. And so for the longest time, I felt bad not only for my parents feeling bad for me because my parents were going to judge me a little bit, but also, you know, society was going to judge my parents because of it. And it was a big conflict for a few months. But then I was like, how long am I going to live here just to shield them from a backward society? How long am I just going to cripple the future of my platform because people are judgmental? So I eventually did it, and I'm glad I did. But that was a really hard decision for me.
Man. So now you've moved into the apartment. You've kind of dealt with this, you know what I'm saying, struggle of like, again, and all this, I feel like all this stuff comes together. It's, you know, how you choose to eat, it's how you choose to live, you know, and honestly, like how you choose to just, you know, let things affect you or not, even though there are some things, you know, you can't change, like, you know, my knee's in an immobilizer, I got to have surgery. But so
Yeah.
what did it feel like once you did that and you realized, all right, listen, you're like, I'm living my life making these choices that I want, you know, making the choice of how I want to eat, which goes against my culture, making the choice of how I want to live my life, which goes against, you know, my culture, and what you eat I mean, I guess not now because it's changing, but it went against like everything, like all the medical recommendations and all that. So like when you had, like, did you have a time where you just had this like feeling, you know, I guess it's, you know, a lot of times people call it like an epiphany, but where you're like, hey, like I'm totally fine. And actually this feels great because I'm living life on my own terms. Did you have like a moment where you just were, you know, kind of felt that euphoria or just like realize, hey, like it wasn't the end of the world?
Yeah, I can't think of a specific moment, but I do get this feeling sometimes when I'm talking to people where they're stuck in a certain mindset, and all I can hear in my head is, why do you care? Like, let me try to think of an example. Give me a second.
No, it's okay. I love it. Like you're like a deep thinker, you know what I mean? I think people are gonna
Okay,
get a
so
lot from this, you know?
like for example, I'll be talking to someone and they'll say, blah, 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 blah. And she cut her hair really short and dyed it bright pink. Like, can you believe that? And my first thought is, why do you care? Like, I'm in a mindset where, like, for real, if it's not hurting somebody, like, why? Why do you care? And I get kind of frustrated sometimes because, like, at the end of the day, people just want to be happy. Honestly, at the end of the day, some people want to be rich, but that's also just to be happy. People want to be in a relationship, but that's also to be happy. People want to get plastic surgery, but at the end of the day, that's just to be happy. It's all just people wanting to be happy. So if I want to be happy and my path to happiness is XYZ, and that doesn't hurt anybody, why would you care? You don't have to understand somebody's reasoning behind why they're happy. You just have to be happy that they're trying to be happy. And I feel like a lot of people's problems is judging others for just finding different paths to happiness. We're just so complicated in how our brain works, and we're just all so different that it just all makes sense that we're going to have different paths to our own happiness, and we only get a limited amount of time. And to try to find happiness in somebody else's path is just, it's stupid. It's a waste of time. And I spend a lot of time just in conversations thinking, why do you care? And just trying to still understand things from other people's perspective because I was totally there at one point. I definitely used to judge people even when they did things that were completely harmless just because it wasn't in tune with what I thought. And that was just how I was raised. But now that I'm thinking differently, it's just, it's like, if people just cared less about what made people happy, then things would be so much easier.
I think that they would. I think that they would too. Like, I know for me, it seems so, I think it seems almost too easy to be real for people sometimes.
Yeah, it
But
seems
it's, yeah,
stupid. It seems,
it's like, oh, so I can
what's
just
the right word?
live my life how I want. I can just eat the food that I want and monitor my own health and uh not give a fuck about what anyone says online or negative. Like, literally, like, I can't. Okay, so there's a really cool book that I think I mention this book like all the time, but I don't know if you've read it. You would love it. It's based in
Okay.
like ancient, like, Toltec culture. It's like and I may be saying that wrong. Your Mexican heritage, I apologize, but it's based in like ancient, like Mexican heritage, and it's called The Four Agreements. And when I tell you that
Okay.
that book may have like saved my life, I don't think it's an extent between that and veganism, because I read that book at a time where my business partner stole like $20,000 from me and my other partner. And a bunch of people
It's
that
tough.
were like the closest people to me, like, all turned on me because of a story one person told, this guy. And years later, it would come out that that wasn't true. But regardless, it was a lot of pain. It was a lot of anguish. It was the last time I remember crying, like, like just sitting in a closet, like just assessing like what had changed in my life and how this was going to cause so much damage. But that book was basically saying, that there are two types of energy, right? And it's a light and it's a darkness. It's a good energy and it's a bad energy. And you have a choice. You have a choice to let that energy consume you in a negative way and go toward that darkness, or you have an option to go toward the light and only worry about one thing. Right? There are two things you can't change and things you can. And that's just what I choose to focus on. And, like, I'll speak to people and I'll be like, just don't pay attention to it. Just don't care. Literally. Is there, like, right now, if you were to go outside and somebody was to say something to you negative, what is there actually anything, or somebody, or I guess a better example, Rebecca, would be like somebody driving in a car, and then they, like, as they drive past you, somebody like screams out the window some like type of slander towards you, you know what I'm saying? And anybody can put themselves in this situation. And then they drive off and you don't know who they were, you don't know where they're going, and you will never see that person again. Just tell me, why do I even care what they said? You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, I would giggle
You,
because they just expended energy. Like,
there you
I don't
go.
even know you. Like, if someone like close, if someone close to me was to say something bad about me, of course you can't help but like hurt a little bit. Yeah. But if a stranger was just like you're a terrible person, I get comments all the time. I mean, social media comes with such negativity.
Yes.
And I must say 99% of the time, I just screenshot them and share them with my friends and we laugh. I got a message yesterday saying that the top of my head is unappealing and to please not put it in my videos.
Okay. Oh.
I was just like, okay. Like, the comments I get, I got a comment telling me that I better take my YouTube money and get a nose job. I was just like, okay.
I mean, and like, you people, listen, this stuff is not going to stop. People are not going to stop being angry with you. People are not going to stop being negative. You can only affect the people that you can affect. And I don't have enough energy to give to everyone. I got to save a little light for myself. So, that's why, when it comes to living the lifestyle the way that I do, and it's just really about what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, I can't expend energy there, so no, I love everything that you stand for. So let me ask you, if you could give people some tips, you know what I mean, on how they can go about, living their life on their own terms, like, what would they be? I mean, maybe it's in the nutrition side, maybe it's in, just the lifestyle, just like, but for you, like, if you could give people some tips, like how would you tell them to get started and just, not worry about what is the status quo, you know what I mean? And focusing on, like we said, everybody's doing stuff to just make themselves happy. So what would you suggest for people?
I think it applies to any part of your life, and it's just to question your feelings in a way. Not to say that your feelings are invalid, but if you see something and it makes you angry or it makes you offended or uncomfortable, is just to question why. And I think very easily, maybe even like 75% of the time, it's just because you've been conditioned to feel that way. And if you just take a second and think like, wait, why do I feel this way? Or even like, why does that person feel that way? If you do something and your intent wasn't to hurt somebody or to offend somebody and they get offended and you feel like you're in the right, if you think, okay, why is this person offended? They could be offended because they weren't able to do that when they were your age, or they could feel offended because they were taught that what you're doing is wrong. You can't, if you question your feelings and other feelings by thinking why, it just helps you think through things more clearly. And it helps you replace some of the negative emotions that have been like programmed into you about things with, I guess, not caring, but not in a bad way. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you like a little example. Like I was raised, the Arabic culture is very torn between religions. So I was born in a Christian family, and I was raised not really by my parents, but by the culture I was in, that like Muslims were bad people. Not like they were all out to get you, but they were just like naturally like just slimy people. You know, I was just taught that. And it was never said to me outright, but it was just like in the way people talked about them, in the way people acted around them. And you know, when you're young, you can't help but absorb that. And so when I grew up and I learned that somebody was Muslim, actually some Muslim guy asked me out on a date, and my reaction was, oh no. And he said, why? And I was like, because you're Muslim. And it would never work out. And he was like, we can't go out to dinner. And I was like, no. And I thought about it for a second. And I was like, why am I saying no? Like, this is actually a really nice person. He was handsome. He was nice. And he was just asking out to dinner. And he was like an acquaintance of mine. And I was like, why am I thinking that way? It's purely just because I was taught to. And it was at that point that I let go of that feeling and that thought. And that was actually one of the first cultural things that I let go of, was, I guess, thinking negatively about other people because of like the religion that they were brought up into. And so, yeah, thinking why allows you to let go of thoughts that don't serve you and just hurt you and hurt others. So yeah, thinking why. When you feel a certain gut emotion, think why you're feeling it.
Man, that's deep. That's really awesome, man. I could talk to you like all day. Hopefully you'll be up for doing it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd be down. I had a good time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, tell everybody where they can find you. Tell everybody, about your channel, please, because I just want everybody to just go and check you out and support you, because I think that you're really amazing, you know?
Thanks. So right now I just have a YouTube and Instagram. It's Vegan Bodega Cat. I didn't think that my channel would grow when I chose such a long and complicated name that nobody knows what it is. But a bodega cat is a cat that lives in a little deli in New York City, and I was obsessed with them when I was little, so I just slapped vegan onto the front of it.
Yo, I love it though. Like we were talking about like branding and stuff, and I was like, okay, Vegan Bodega Cat, I guess. Yeah, it's a little long. And then as I started following you, it fits you, you know what I'm saying? So just from an outside perspective, like it's unique, like it has like a deeper meaning behind it. And I freaking love it. So I hope you don't change it.
Yeah, I go through back and forth between, I actually do love it. It's just, short and sweet is usually the way to go when it comes to building a brand. And yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth about whether I'm going to change it or not, because I just love bodega cats. They kind of found a way to adapt. Yeah, they found a way to adapt to the situation which they live in. And I love when people tag me in videos and pictures of bodega cats they find. Like, I love it.
Listen,
yeah, that's me on YouTube and Instagram.
I'm gonna ask you, you should do a freaking video talking about that straight up. You should just talk about like that's your story, like in its own, you know? So, I'm sorry. Yeah. Tell everybody your Instagram though. I'm just rambling on.
Yeah, just Vegan Bodega Cat on YouTube and Instagram. I post almost every day on Instagram. I post 3 times a week on YouTube. And it's mostly around veganism and food, but sometimes it's just like vlogs and like silly things. And we just have a good time. I love having discussions with different people about different ideas and yeah, and food. I love food.
I think it's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to share this with people, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Thank
and
you.
maybe we'll just talk about some of your favorite vegan snacks, because you got a lot to share for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm a food connoisseur. That's me.
All right, awesome. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Hey guys, Marcus here. Listen, I'm so appreciative of you guys coming and checking out the podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen. And if you know someone that this would help, please share this podcast with them. Help us to reach as many people as possible and make a serious impact. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you get alerted when every new episode releases.